to our next episode of Future Focused CXOs. We have a very special guest today. He's Kevin Miller, the President and CEO of Travis Credit Union. Kevin, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thanks for
And
having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
you have a great background, so why don't you jump in, give us 2 minutes about your introduction. We have a lot of questions and topics to talk to you about.
Absolutely. I've been with Travis Credit Union for the past 3 years, and I'm happy to talk more about the organization in the podcast today. My background, as I like to joke, is an accidental banker. I never thought I would work in financial services. It was where I landed my first corporate role out of college. I've had the good pleasure. I started my career at the national banks in those corporate functions, learning product pricing, promotion, segmentation. Then I moved to the regional banks to run profit and loss or lines of business, which was a great experience. Got to do some transformational mergers and acquisitions, doubling the size of organizations, all of the integrations. Worked for a couple of regional banks across the US. Then I had the good pleasure of working for a consumer lending fintech for a bit, really focused on helping those with subprime or near prime credit get out of that vicious cycle. By the way, the tip is it's really hard. I was approached about the incredible role at Travis. If you look at my career shifting from a corporate to then running a division to running a large business, what I loved about that part of those jobs was I could connect why I came to work every single day with what I do and what the team does. So when you think about a credit union, it's a member-owned cooperative. It typically serves a certain segment of members. There's lots of names, field of membership, things like that. But for me, it was taking all of those years of experience and different career journeys, the ups, the downs, the sideways, all the things you don't see on my resume, and really then getting to apply that to a mission-based organization. So it's been a really cool experience. Again, I've been here about 3 years. So that's a bit about me in a nutshell.
Awesome. As a recovered banker myself, talk to me a little bit about this accidental banker. What did you do before and how did that not translate into this world of finance?
Life's paths take you interesting places. I would say there's 2 threads to this. The first is starting in about middle school, I started doing work in community theater. I learned that I'm comfortable public speaking. I did not like acting. It's not a skill set I have, but I fell in love with the behind the scenes, which very much fits into maybe more of my leadership style, kind of servant leadership, less about I have to be the face of the organization, but more about enabling the organization. So I worked in community theater, operations, lighting design, did that all the way through college. It was a volunteer gig. Then I got a part-time job and I worked all the way through undergrad. That was thread 1, super interesting, very different. In college, I did some summer internships, all with larger name brands, cool organizations. When you think about those 2 things coming together, I happened to graduate college during the dot-com bubble. There weren't many jobs, and that's what led me. I'm very fortunate to have a number of mentors, and one of them said the opportunity cost to get your graduate degree in a very applied space. I went to graduate school for basically quantitative marketing. That's what then led me into the financial services world. Honestly, as I tell everybody, I thought I would be there like 4 years. I'm going to hate it. And I learned about all of the work it takes to think about a member or a customer, all the things it takes to get that thing to come to life. Here you are 20-something years later, loving it. So it's never, ever would have thought, hey, I would be in the role I'm in today. Nor did I ever think I would be in the career I am today.
Great to know. You said a very nice thing. Life takes us around and it builds the careers. We are also very interested, and we'll get to this question for sure. With all the executives that we speak to, one common thread that comes out, a non-linear path to career. It intrigues us because not that deliberately somebody goes on that path. Had we known it, maybe we could have been a CEO 10 years back, but it doesn't happen that way. It happens through how the career goes. And we look back and see that is where the real learning is, saying, what did I do different? I just took that decision that time, but what did I do different, which made me come here?
I was fortunate. It wasn't until, let's call it 7 years into my journey, where I ended up having someone talk to me. They did the whole vertical and the horizontals, right? So your career could be, I want to be the CFO and I rise the vertical. My career has been zigzagging, sometimes sideways. The discussion was, for me, how I interpreted that was building a portfolio of skills. It wasn't until a number of years into my career where what I decided, what are things I have done? What's the adjacent space, which is the most likely for you to progress when you're working for a company? If I'm in marketing saying, hey, I want to go to accounting, that's a very large leap of faith on an organization. But saying I work in marketing and I want to go to e-commerce at the time, or I want to learn more about product management, that's a pretty natural adjacency. What happened is over time, I became more clear. I would evaluate opportunities against these portfolio of skills. It wasn't until I had some experience where I could then figure out what are those opportunities. To your point, Jay, even more important is what conditions do I think I would be successful? There might be a great role, shiny role. The way that role functions maybe isn't your strongest suit. It doesn't mean you don't challenge yourself, but you go in eyes wide open. Where does my skill set apply? And how do I make sure I'm trying to go after those things, or at least telling people, hey, I'm interested in these types of things? Because one of the things I learned at a very large company was if you aren't able to articulate what your interests are, someone will decide it for you.
Yeah, exactly.
I watched that happen to peers early in my career. So it was this like aha moment. Now, I didn't know the answer. I was still, like my other peers, completely unclear. But did it get my attention? Did I remember being, I need to have an answer? To your point, really filling in on that. It's not linear. It's all over the place. When you take a static snapshot and you see somebody like Jay, you or Steve, you look and it looks very linear, as if it happened programmatically. It absolutely does not. It's chaotic. It's messy. There's forwards, there's backwards. You laugh, you cry. It all happens along the journey.
I love that thinking about how you approach considering your career, how you're intentional about the next choices. But then you also said that you basically cheerleaded for yourself. I've always, as a manager, would tell people, like, do not count on me to cheerlead for you. If I can, I will. I'm one of the few people that know that I want to do that for you. But most bosses are busy.
Yeah.
They either don't know how, or they don't have time, or both, or they don't care. If one of those three, they're still not cheerleading for you. If no one knows that you're looking, no one can help you. You have to cheerlead for yourself, your accomplishments and your interests. I love that you saw others have it decided for them is a great way of explaining that. Yeah. Let me ask you this, though. You pivoted. You said you went to large bank. But pivoting out of a creative environment into a large bank is really a culture shock as far as I've ever seen. What were some of those biggest challenges you faced during that transition from, okay, I'm not going to work in theater, I'm going to work in financial services? How did you navigate those?
It took me about 2 years to get my footing. I had done internships in large corporate environments, so it wasn't that I didn't understand, but I'd never, as a full-time job, operated in them. The story I like to tell, early in my career at the large organization, we had a great leader, and he did skip levels with the entire division every single year. This was a very smart person, a little bit imposing, but genuinely you felt like he actually wanted to know you. Just a little bit opposing. He did a walk. If you wanted to, you could do a walking one-on-one skip level. Instead of sitting beside a very awkward desk interaction, you could go for a walk around the city this company operated in. So we do this, very engaging. I get to explain a little bit about my journey with the organization. I think a lot of ahas for him. I get to the end, and for whatever reason, I have the courage to ask him, what is your opinion of me? At that point in my career, probably not known for courage. Let me just specify that. He looks at me and he says, any one of my direct reports would happily have you on their team. No question. Hard worker, smart, you put in the hours. But from my perspective, Kevin, you're undifferentiated from your peers. I lost all of my skin tone. But it was one of those, someone finally said the truth to your face. That was one of those great moments. Flash forward, he moves on to a different role in the organization. Just maybe 6-8 months go by. I ask if he would find time for me. He does. I set up 30-45 minutes and I go back and I say, this is what you told me. These are all the things I have done since we last chatted. He smiled and said, that's exactly what I hoped you would do. Fast forward 6 months later, I wanted to move from marketing to product management. Organizational change happens. They're on a hunt for talent. Whose name gets floated? Me. Again, these are these non-linear things. You put in the work. You were there. I worked the hours. But you could not have predicted that owning the follow-up, that memory of something, this person was 3 levels above me, but they remembered. That's why oftentimes, Jay and Steve, to your point, at the time, you don't know the value of the thing. It isn't until afterwards you recognize it. The best you can do is you can show up right? Every single day, you can work hard, you can be engaged, and you get a few moments of courage and you go for it. Sometimes you're successful and sometimes you fall flat on your face. Half of my success is luck. The other half is working hard at being at the right place at the right time. But it doesn't always mean it went the right way. For every good story, there are 5 not good stories. That is the thing we gloss over often. We don't talk about what went wrong. We talk about, wow, look at these titles. To me, I think one of those big learnings in hindsight is we need to talk about the reality of the journey versus you get this and you achieve this and you get this and you get the title and whatever. That isn't actually how the whole thing works.
You did a great thing. I'm sorry. Yeah, sorry, Jay. I'll step out in a minute, but you did this great thing. You invited yourself into a conversation with leaders. I think in that respect, I would love to see, we can do this, talk about this later, but I'd love to see how you bring that down now as the leader, right? How do you make yourself available and what does that look like? How does someone, especially someone trying to advance in their careers, even if they're not sure which direction they're going, right? How do they set themselves up to get those moments of truth that they need to hear to make decisions about what changes or what follow-ups and other things?
I'm happy to answer it. First, we do skip levels. I do skip levels with a huge swath of our company every single year. In my case, I also do it with the board of directors. Every year, I probably meet with, call it 50 people. Plus, I do market visits, I do contact center visits, I'm in the community. What I know to be true is if you are not perceived as accessible and as human, you've lost the battle. It doesn't mean you're perfect. I am absolutely not perfect. What it means is a lot of the work I do is dispelling the myth that because of title or whatever you believe it to be, that somehow I am different. To me, that's where it goes wrong. You might have different sets of experiences, but the reality is I get up in the morning just like you do. I go to work just like you do. The more I can dispel the myth, our corporate headquarters is a 4-story building. And I like to joke to dispel the myth at our company. The air is not different on the 4th floor as it is on the 1st floor. I just think it's really important. So I do skip levels, do lots of visits. One of the things we do as an executive team, we're doing a ton of work on how do we get to a better job of having honest conversations, giving good feedback. It's not easy, right? These are people you care about. They're amazing. It's really difficult. That's a constant journey, right? You never achieve their nirvana state. I think what we owe people is what is it we think that they need to improve on that is legitimately tied to their role and their aspiration. Oftentimes we forget. We're saying stuff to people, but they don't want to be that thing. You're setting yourself up for a pretty large failure when you're like, hey, Kevin, I want you to be 6 foot. Sadly, I'm 5'11". Like that, you got to really understand it, and you don't always get it right, but you really do try. So we spend a lot of energy on talents. What are we doing? Are we getting better at it? Or being honest with each other? It's messy, right? It gets messy at times.
Oh yeah, people are different. Many times people react differently. Most of them get immediately into a defensive mode. And it's a human tendency. It's not particular to any person. That's where I think the balance starts coming. I always start a conversation saying that we are having this conversation because I care about you. Yeah. If I don't care about you, I don't care about this feedback. You can go your way, I can go my way. That actually maybe sets the stage. In that conversation, we are all emotional beings, right? It definitely sometimes raises the bar. It feels, oh my God, these 2 guys are arguing hot. Bottom line is we care about each other. The other person is also caring about you. That is why this conversation is happening. But one thing you mentioned, and I wanted to get back to that, is you did speak about portfolio of skills approach. Do you mind talking about it and how it has shaped up your career and what others can learn from it?
Yeah, sure. I would think about it in a couple of categories. The first is functional skills, right? These are disciplines. So product marketing, operations. Companies often think about talent, which is getting people exposed to different functions, right? So Jay's great at this or Steve's great at that. But wouldn't it be great if we also got Steve to learn maybe the other side of it or a related side? Typically, you start there and you start with what am I doing today and what's a logical thing to it? I think of them as concentric circles. Let's say you're in direct marketing today. You would say the most likely career step is 1 ring over. Occasionally, you get a 2-ring move. I don't mean level, but the reality is if you're good at one thing at an organization, if they know you, they'll look and say, Kevin did great at this or Steve did great at this. A logical skill set that's similar would be this. You think of it that way. When you're teeing up conversation, people are thinking about that seems very logical because we do well with logic, right? Oh, wow, that's a great idea, Jay. I totally agree. Then talent planning comes up and they mention it's not because it isn't just the person, it's the other people at the table advocating for the, you know what, I think that's actually a great idea. There's the functional capability. I thought about these concentric rings are what's a logical thing to go from here to there. The next thing then is you've got maturity of the situation you're in, right? You can use the STARS framework from the first 90-day book, the startup turnaround, blah, 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 blah. But those are all uniquely different skill sets. Those become more important as you progress in your career. Often what happens is you get big issues of mismatch. You have all the capabilities. You've never done a turnaround. You could see how someone who's killing it in their function, and you put them into a turnaround and they're looking for direction. When in turnarounds, it's we're hiring smart people, we're going to agree on the plan, and I will see you at the end of the week. The other bucket is a little bit about how you're wired. Some people, super cerebral, PhD level. Other people, they're focused on the F5 button. And then there's a lot of us that play in the middle. For me, that's my sweet spot. I can be very strategic, but I want to see the outcome. You have to know how you're wired. A great example is in my career, there was a conversation around going to an internal consulting role at an organization. I realized I would actually hate that job because I never saw the outcome. Not a knock. Those people are brilliant and you need them. But for me, how I'm wired is I need to
See the outcome.
to see the thing. This takes time. You have to figure out what makes you happy and be honest with yourself. If you end up in a role, you're excited about the role, but you're now playing in a space that you're not comfortable in, it doesn't mean you can't be successful. But you want as much momentum going into the next role as possible because that builds momentum into the next role and it gets you wins. The toughest thing about changing roles inside a company, it's a little less risky, but still risk. When you leave a company, the failure rate of going from company A to company B in some of these bigger roles is actually pretty high. You're trying to figure out in career transitions, how do I de-risk the transition so I get momentum? If that kind of helps. So I think about the functions, I think about what's the maturity of the organization, and then there's what's actually required of the role, and am I actually good at that? Those are some hard soul-seeking conversations many times. Sometimes it's a clear answer, and many times you just got to go with your gut, I guess is the best way to describe it.
Well, hey, can I pivot a little bit adjacent to that? Now that you're in a comprehensive leadership role, as opposed to product marketing or something like that, you are now in charge of things like digital transformations. AI and stuff like that. I'd love to hear a little bit, maybe a success story or how you've approached having to deal with that, either at Travis or any previous organization where you've had to deal with leading or managing some sort of digital transformation in the organization.
Some failures, if you don't mind, because it teaches us more as you're comfortable.
What I found for me is back to the career journey. I'll answer the question is that I went from highly mature, big. Then I went to regional, super cool. What I found is my actual sweet spot is in the transformation and kind of rebuild. When I ran the retail bank in the Midwest, those jobs were, we've got a starting point. It's not where we want it to be. The puzzle is figuring out all of the competing dynamics of how do you get to where you want to go with what you got. Anybody can walk in and say, Stephen, what I need is a bunch of money in 3 years. No one is afforded that luxury.
Exactly.
I think that's also one of these myths, which is you get what you get, and then you win the right to get other resources. The same as of the CEO, by the way. You've got a board of directors. To answer your actual question, I've done a number of digital transformation projects where we were lagging in member or customer experience. The goal was to basically dramatically improve that experience for our members, customers. You often have to then figure out you want to do it. Then the question is, are you ready to do it from a readiness? A lot of these big projects, the goal is you want to de-risk them as much as possible. But in addition, you need to make sure you've got a readiness capability, which means when I go to do this, my probability of success is very high. The question you asked about the things that have happened, at Travis in 2023, we replaced our online banking platform with a third party built from the ground up to support predominantly credit unions, larger credit unions, from selection to implementation under 2 years, delivered it on time under budget. Interesting. What matters though is our app score went from 2.2 to 4.9 in a year of implementation. We saw 10 to 15% increase in our historical members who didn't use online enrolled. There's a lot of these myths about demographics. These people won't do it. Yes, there's always somebody who won't do a thing, but the reality is oftentimes they don't do it because it doesn't work well. It's not easy. So we saw meteoric increase in the utilization of the platform. We introduced free credit scores for the first time. We're seeing great success with that. So we were able to close within a 2-year period our largest member experience pain. That enables the next 5 things to go do. So then the question you ask is, what happens when things go wrong? I can think of many things, but oftentimes really tough things happen during big system conversions. They're highly complex. I have worked on at least one merger where everything by definition went pretty well. But when they moved over the conversion file, they lost a day of transactions.
Not good for a bank. Yeah, we don't know what happened on this day.
So we got them back. Good news is everyone's whole. We did all the things, but really tough in the organization. Maybe a parallel is the struggle, particularly financial institutions faced during the pandemic, because you have 2 worlds existing. Those that corporate, that are at home. You have all these people in a branch or in a call center, and you can imagine how the optics of that are not so great. One of the big learnings out of the pandemic was, true story today, one of my jobs, what people remember is that I was smiling at every town hall. In the middle of the pandemic, the riots, the locusts, whatever you want to throw in there, in a time of uncertainty, what people expect from their leader is calm, is positivity. We called it positive optimism. So it's not, oh, Ma, everything's going to be great. How would you know we're in the middle of a pandemic? But what people wanted was honesty. So we called it positive optimism. We're honest, right? We don't know. What they wanted is to be able to come into work every single day, look up and be like, leadership team looks calm. They're doing their best. They've got our best interest in mind, and we're going to do this together. And so leading people through change, that is the thing I cannot overemphasize. The more senior you get, the more people expect you to behave in a certain way. I want to be clear. It does not mean you are not genuine to who you are. I have a very rapid pace of speech, which I spend a lot of effort getting better at slowing down. I am still true to myself, but I also know that in certain settings, I can dial up and dial down how I show up. At the end of the day, my sense of humor, my pace of thinking, exactly the same. That to me is a very hard thing as a leader to come to terms with. I spent years trying to be other people because that's who I referenced. Steve, if you were just more like Jay, I can't be like Jay. There's only one Jay. It was a long journey for me to figure out, how do I figure out what is uniquely Kevin that works for me and in my role? I would say these things about showing up, the rules change in certain roles, the expectation changes, and they don't really tell you. And you are judged in a way, this is not a complaint, but it's a reality of people moving into broader roles. You are reviewed, you are judged in a way that you don't fully understand. I will give you a real life example. Earlier in my career, my team was mostly on one floor of a building. And when I needed to go to a certain place in the building, it was like a split. So I could go to the right or to the left. For whatever reason, I'm right-handed, I went to the right. So I got some feedback. What's interesting? And of course, while you're doing that, you make a point of, hey, Steve, how you doing? I said hi to everybody. It was viewed as I didn't like the left side as much. These things end up mattering more than you could ever realize. Now, it doesn't mean you live your life in paranoia. No, but one day you come in and you realize you're being judged against a set of criteria that were not in the playbook of the role before you. It's a great challenge. It's a great honor, but you're not going to be told. Learning some of those things or hearing from people is going to be really important because those social cues have a very large impact on your effectiveness, typically at the C-suite, where the rules change. You intellectually understand, but it's not like they have a 101 for you being like, hey, Steve, tomorrow you need to behave differently. You ascend into the role, you hit the ground running, and then you learn.
I want to ask you a different question, but when I first time decided to become a CEO, One of my mentors told me something which I still didn't forget. He said, henceforth, whatever bad you do or incorrect you do or wrong you do is going to get amplified. That's what world is going to talk about. Okay. Whatever good you do, which you will be doing 99%, that is expected. Nobody will talk about it. You have to become a little thick skin as well. People talk about that, but it's fine. It's my role which is amplifying that rather than my real intention. Very well said. I definitely wanted to ask you a question on AI. We are also in front of a lot of these AI pilots and implementations and other things. Your company is in a unique position. You guys are been using the predictive AI or analytics AI a lot in terms of underwriting your mortgages, understanding financial risks. What are you guys now doing with so much of advancement of AI? Share as much as you can. Don't tell us any confidential projects you might be doing, but do tell us what are the key use cases that you are implementing, which actually you see the most benefit for your company?
That's a great question. And I'll start with the obvious statement. No one has the perfect answer. This comes with every technological change in our lifetime. You can do the Gartner hype factor, whatever you want to do. I'll break it into two parts for us. One, we're using large language models or predictive analytics or AI light for process-related things that don't touch the member. These are how do you get documents for a loan faster? These are the reason we're doing those. One of our vendor partners has that capability built in. So you can turn them on, you can test, you can control, and you can get comfortable with, is it making a sound decision? Is it representing the trust? We're in the trust, we're a financial institution. We don't have trust, you have nothing. We have multiple process areas where we're using these tools to basically automate capabilities or replace capabilities that normally would be 25 steps. Those go really well because they're super measurable. This objective, this use case, this expected outcome, and you work your way there. I would say in those, making a ton of sense. The area that I would say for an organization like Travis, for perspective, we're like a nice sized credit union. It's about $5.3 billion in assets. You got about 260,000 members, and we've got a team of about 600 team members, give or take. The struggle almost every organization is having is, how do you think about the use of AI for your team members? How do you think about it for your members? The members for financial institution has the highest risk because of all of the rules in which we're governed by, but not insurmountable. I think we're pivoting a bit on our approach. We had this aha about 30 days ago. We already have team members. We have a policy about what you're allowed to do and not allowed to do. Cool. We have a bunch of team members who use, under our policy, some of these tools to drive better service to our members, meaning they can look up a code faster, they can process something faster, they can write a better memo, whatever the thing is. What we're actually getting ready to do is we're going to take those super smart people, have them articulate for us the top 3 use cases and scripts, and then we're going to basically introduce it in stage components. The script we're going to flip is, it is here, it is a reality. We need to figure out what is a thoughtful way to use it, a way that honors the trust we owe to our members and meets our regulatory obligations. So we've actually got a group of people spinning up right now. We've got 4 or 5 people who have done some really cool stuff. We're going to have them do a demo for a bunch of people. We'll take a small group, make them a little bit bigger, get some learnings, and then we'll start to iterate from there. Anytime you use, whether it's a co-pilot or whatever, every time you go to touch one of those, it causes 5 more questions to be asked. I'll give you a real life example. If you enable Copilot, the next version of it on all of our devices, one of the questions that comes up is, what is your permission management? Here's why that would matter. If you run into Copilot, what are the last 3 conversations Steve and Kevin had? What if I didn't place that information in the right place? Copilot could find that. You could see how that would not be great for anybody. What we have found is, let's get really specific on use cases. Let's then have somebody flow it through and figure out the green path and the red and yellow path. Then we can start to slowly chunk this thing out. Literally pivoting our approach in the last 90 days. We're learning like everybody else. We're trying to be very thoughtful. But ultimately, we're going to frame it as, how do we help our team deliver on the mission? In most cases, it's being able to do things faster and better so that you can go home and see your family on time and you can take care of your members better.
Great examples, I think. You're spot on. We are also talking a lot AI to a lot of our customers, and we are a Salesforce consulting company. The agentic AI that Salesforce released is causing a lot of these questions, saying that, what's the privacy of my data? number one. What is the accessibility? What is the governance rules? If I enable it, exactly what you said, and if I enable emails going there, can I really start asking AI, what is my boss talking about me? Ideally, right? If you enable, so you have to be onto that front. That is actually spot on.
Kevin's kid doesn't have to ask the executive 3 up to what do you think of me? He can just ask his AI agent, what does this guy think of me?
If you don't, what I learned as of the last 7 days, we were talking with our CIO, and we've got some really awesome people I travel. We're working through, okay, what would the challenge of trying this? Cool. Love a good test and learn. Our info security person and our CIO are like, hey, one of the things we just have to think through, not that you can't do it, but to Jay's point, what you have to work through is, where is it getting the information from? And is there an unintended consequence? All can be achieved. All are doable. In our minds, what the iPhone taught us is I should be able to click a button or push on an app and it should work. The reality is the reason the iPhone experience, whether you love them or don't love them, is so slick is they spend a ridiculous amount of time working through how everything flows.
Oh, yeah.
And we take it for granted. So when I go to do it, I'm like, how hard can it be? By the way, hard. That's what we're all learning in a good way. I think it's very positive.
Let me ask you, as a growing credit union, you're moderately sized, as you put it. How do you, as a CEO, and whether as a tech team or anything, make decisions on whether you build this or whether you buy it? Obviously, you're like, hey, I'm not going to go build an AI engine. What am I going to do? How do you guys think through those decisions as a credit union these days to boost profitability of your members and enable the teams that you need to enable?
It's a great question. Again, not profess that we have it perfectly figured out. What we're trying to do is be realistic around what's the level of effort, what's the efficacy of how long we think the solution will last. Is there probably 2 parts? I'll give you an example. I won't say what it is, but there's a scenario we're looking at where we could take the Cadillac approach. We'll probably be ready for in about 4 to 5 years, maybe year 4. Or there's a faster to market solution. In the first 2.5 years will be cheaper and then become more expensive at year 4 and 5. Where we're going to land is, for this particular topic, what we're solving for is a better member experience. So our bias is going to be the second option. We'll mature into the more sophisticated option. Oftentimes what we get lost is we so want to have all the shiny things. I'm no different. Our team has very high expectations, and we don't want to be okay. The reality is you cannot be a 10 out of 10 out of everything. It is exorbitantly hard for highly driven people to say to each other, you know what, Jay, on this feature, if we were a 6, our members would still be very satisfied. It's the appropriate cost, and this is the right path. By the way, we have optionality that 3 or 4 years from now, we can change. For us, the implication is, from a technological perspective, what we've been focused on is being operationally, how do we run with a lot of rigor? 2, how do we get really good at integrations? If integrations are the key to the changing, evolving technological world, then no matter what, while we might be annoyed and painful, we can always make a change as long as we understand how long am I in this thing for. No very long-term contracts. We can mature and we can deliver on phase 1, get value. And if we're absolutely just outgrown it, we can upgrade. That is often our dialogue. On that continuum, what exactly are we solving for? What's the optionality cost? What's the right thing to do today? It's highly imperfect. Steve, does that kind of help, at least how we're thinking about the trade-off?
And I think a small follow-up on that is, if you decide to do it yourself, how do you decide whether I want to build a team and do it in-house, or I want to get a strategic vendor and build it and then take over? How do you make those decisions?
I would say, as a general statement, for where we are in the journey, we're typically doing things through a third party. There are some things, we have a dev team that really focuses on our core infrastructure, security, all those are fun foundational components of that. We've spent the last couple of years getting way better at integration so that when we get new great capabilities, boom, we went from releasing one large thing in 2023 with an integration with a third party. We did 5 or 6 of those last year. We went from a capability of 1 to 5 or 6. Once a quarter, we were making major changes. I think for us, that's a predictable pattern. And once you know the predictable pattern, you can choose to dial up, dial down based on macroeconomic scenarios, funding available, risk of the project. So I think we're focused a lot on integrations with partners. As we get bigger and bigger, there will be a point where we will then bring some things in-house, but for speed to market, today, it is predominantly integrations.
I got it. Okay.
We do a lot of, we have a whole API set and all of that, but what I generally find is the cost to build a ground up thing is so long that we're foregoing value. That value is why we have members. That value is, hey, I've got to compete against the national banks. Therefore, I've got to make sure I'm staying, not copying, but I need to demonstrate my brand needs to stand for something. I need to be involved in the right way in the community. And I need to have the right capabilities that says I am a great alternative to a national bank. Oh, by the way, you will see me in your community. I will teach your kids financial education. I will be there for a disaster, right? I will do all of these things. That's one of our value components of things.
Hey, we always ask this question of all of our leaders. What advice would you give to aspiring C-suite leaders as they're trying to decide how to get towards that particular title, whichever that is? What advice do you typically give to those that are trying to more or less take your job?
Yeah, they should. That's a great aspiration. So I would start with first, have an honest conversation around what is it you think you really want and do you really want it? The CEO role is a very different role. I love the job. I'm having a great time. You spend your entire career, you have one boss. Now you have a board. Again, I like it. Our board's fantastic. You're playing in a space where the rules are very different. For some, super cool. For others, maybe not as much. You got to be honest. And also, what does that lifestyle look like for you? How does your spouse, partner feel about? Do they love having to go in public with you? Meaning, if you have to go to lots of public, you need to have a very honest conversation around, hey, if I'm working 70 hours a week, what is the implication on the family?
Of course, yeah.
One, is it actually the thing you want? Two, I would say, think about the portfolio of skills. Understand that there is no one singular path to the seat. If you desire to get to the C-level role, it will take you multiple attempts to get there. You talk to recruiting firms, they will tell you for a CEO of a credit union, it's 2 to 3 attempts to get the role. Most of us are not wired in a way that has the patience for a multi-year experience. So I would be honest with, what are you really solving for? That's personal, that's your family, life, whatever makes you happy. Yeah. Second is portfolio of skills. Then I would say, make sure the organization aligns to what you want it to be and vice versa. Make sure you're really good at onboarding. You have a very short window to make a first impression. With a lot of the feedback I give our leaders that are up and coming here is the person that has the most currency as an organization is somebody who has a track record of delivering and knows how to assess the situation they're getting into, knows how to tackle it. It does not mean they have all the answers. It does not mean they're perfect. But if you can walk into a situation and say, here's how I'm going to approach this, I know to ask for help, that is a universal player that has the most value in an organization. That means you're mobile. That means I can challenge you in different ways. But it demonstrates to me that I can throw curveballs, not in a mean way. Your probability of being successful is high. That, in the world we live in today, is the reality of the job. If you want to be a CEO, you're going to walk into. It's tariffs, it's natural disasters, it's a macroeconomic thing. That is a great preparation for how do you handle happy in the morning or sad in the afternoon. That's the reality of the job. It's a great thing. But if you don't like that, you need to be really clear about what you're getting into. I would say if you learn what's the thing I'm solving, you have a framework for it, you have good sounding boards to challenge your assumptions, you can do anything. I guess those are my 3 pieces.
Oh, that is great advice. We asked this question to everybody, but I think I got very different answers than the conventional answers. I was just telling Steve the other day that we got so many podcasts done. Now we are planning to put them all. We have also ChatGPT for our own company board. We can upload it there and we can actually ask it questions, get some quotes out, get some these like portfolio of skills is something I'm going to keep using it now. But thank you so much. It is so worth talking to you, Kevin. Thanks for spending time with us. Any last thoughts before we conclude the podcast?
Steve, Jay, I really appreciate the opportunity. I appreciate you letting me talk a little about my history, my experiences, as well as the work we're doing at Travis. It's always a great pleasure to be able to shine a little spotlight on some of the cool things we're doing here. Also giving back to people in a way that sometimes I was very fortunate people did for me. Mostly I learned through making mistakes, which is how we all learn, and nothing wrong with that.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Failing forward. I love it. So, thank you so much, Kevin.
Have a good day.